Well, Malu, I'd like to let you know that certain states and governments have, set up their own investigative panels to look into this. And the federal government also said something about that. Where petitions will be presented, and if your case is something that they can go on with, it would be looked into. But of course, I'm sure if you've been following the process, you would also notice that it's gone beyond ending police brutality. Now Nigerians are asking a functional government. They're asking for accountability. They're asking for a new Nigeria. But the recent killings that happened at the toll, I'm sure you all heard it. It was on the news. It was everywhere. How are Nigerians and South Africans taking it? For you, who's a news person, how did you feel when you realized that soldiers were shooting at innocent protesters?
Look, I mean, I'm going to go back to yesterday, to that march, and because there were some South Africans also who joined that march, who were actually quite angry at the scenes that we saw on Tuesday evening, and of course, saying that it also shows that, African governments, they're battling to come up with ways of finding solutions to the problems that young people actually need solved. You're right. In fact, some of the protesters from Nigeria that I spoke to were actually saying to me, as you rightfully pointed out, that this goes beyond police brutality. They're saying that the issue of SARS has been a trigger for them, calling they need a functioning government. They need, it's about bread and butter issues. They said, one of them actually said that, I'd love to go back home. I'd love to go back home and work there. But the reason why I'm in South Africa is because I'm battling to find employment, in Nigeria. Bear in mind, as South Africa, we also have a massive unemployment challenge. So it's actually quite interesting to hear South Africans and to hear Nigerians living in South Africa, talking about the concerns back home, but also talking about the situation that they also find themselves in here in South Africa.
Well, lastly, I want to paint a picture because we've heard of all kinds of theories that have been propounded by professors, elder statesmen across Africa about the revolution of Africa starting from Nigeria, and that it would have to trickle from Nigeria to the rest of Africa. Do you sense a sort of awakening with what's happening in Nigeria, around Africa, resonating? Let's not forget there are protests happening everywhere, almost everywhere in Africa, talking about even South Africa. There's Tanzania who's also planning protests. The femicides, all kinds of things. People are protesting. Do you see this, this revolution, resonating with the rest of Africa? And where do we go from here? Do you see it dying down, or do you see it becoming more upbeat than usual?
I've covered a lot of protests here in South Africa, right? And whether it's South Africans protesting, whether it's Zimbabweans protesting, or Nigerians protesting, what for me has been interesting to watch has been that the people at the forefront of these protests have been young people, right? And that then says to me as a journalist that, okay, we're seeing a young person who is fed up of governments that constantly make promises but fail to deliver on those promises. I'll go back to 2016 and 17 here in South Africa, right, where we saw young people in almost every institution of higher learning here in South Africa protesting, demanding fees to fall, right? That was a major strike. That was a major protest by young people, and this was nationwide. And I don't recall. I've worked as a journalist now in South Africa for 10 years. I don't recall seeing young people mobilizing themselves like that for just one cause. And I think this is a start. I think this is a start of young Africans who want to hold those in power accountable. And they understand their power. And the population in the African continent is young. And that should say something. And that should say something. And that should say something to those that are in power, actually, that if you don't address the concerns or the issues that this electorate or this voting population has, and this massive voting population has, you've got a problem.
Very true. Well, I want to thank you, Malungelo Booi, for speaking with us. Very interesting conversation that we've had.
Thanks for having me.
Protests will continue, and hopefully governments would pay attention to the message that the young people have for them. Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you so much for having me.